Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Okay, what's up? I'm here with TSOTCHKE, who is obviously, he is the Zodi of the Zodis, pretty much. The master is the Zodikim. I'm going to try and use proper Hebrew today, only for him. Everybody knows I'm pretty bad at it, so I don't make any pretense otherwise, but I'm so excited to welcome back TSOTCHKE, obviously of ex-Twitter infamy, and also just like a brilliant, a true wielder of the crystal millennium, and just someone I'm so humbled and flattered to be even by proxy associated with, and hopefully I bring a little of my own sparks of splendor when he's not here, but when he is here, I have to say that it's kind of magic. It's always magic. And so I'll let TSOTCHKE say whatever he wants, but thank you so much, TSOTCHKE. And this show kind of wouldn't be what it is without you, for real. And people love your episodes. They've always been the most popular ones, and they've pushed me to grow in my esoteric knowledge, but particularly in Hebrew Kabbalah. So thank you so much, TSOTCHKE. I appreciate it deeply.
Well, once again, Jin, we've had a wonderful opportunity to speak together on your show. I always appreciate having this chance to not only address your audience and the internet and the community at large, but to be able to share this time with you on something that's so important and so vital and meaningful to both of us, and hopefully to a lot of other people. I'm really grateful to be here, and I think we'll have a lot of really cool things to talk about tonight.
So I just want to make a note. Usually I wouldn't, but it is, of course it is. Well, it just even turned into a magic number just now, but it is New Year's Eve. And so it kind of is perfect to talk about the rising of the quote unquote silver age. Maybe I'll let TSOTCHKE frame it however he wants to frame it. It's his episode. Everybody knows we're just living in the TSOTCHKE multiverse. But TSOTCHKE, why don't you talk about some of the technologies that you've been working on the last year that we haven't spoken, like on the show, and some of the changes that you've been envisioning for technology, maybe humanity, maybe the aeon. I don't know. I'll let you say whatever you want to say, but just talk about some of the rising tide, you could say, that you see happening in the broader landscape.
Well, Jen, at the exact moment that you mentioned it was a magical time, it's exactly 22:22 Eastern time on New Year's Eve here in my area. So it's very poignant of you to say that. With regards to what I've been working on, so most recently we've been very excited to share a fully developed programming language with the world. This is a low-level systems language that's written in sort of like a high-level dialect. So normally there's sort of a trade-off in terms of performance versus ease of use. So something like, C or even assembly would be a lot lower level. You get lower and lower to the actual machine code, but the performance is very, very good, but the readability and human kind of understanding of it is very, very minimal. So sort of the closer you get to the actual machine, the less comprehensive it is. The higher you get above it, the more sort of understanding it is. But the trade-off is performance. So generally speaking, if you're concerned with like numerical accuracy or your computations being efficient and at the level of compute that the actual machine itself is running on, you need to sort of write your code in a very, very low level dialect. Ordinarily, most research in machine learning is done in Python. It's a very high level dialect, but it is very, very easy to read. It's almost like the English language, but it has a lot of trade-offs as a result of that, which unfortunately in our age, we're now living in a world where AI domination requires a great deal of energy expenditure, and so therefore every single link in the chain that is sort of unnecessary, so to speak, is just wasted electricity, and electricity is energy, and energy is physical matter moving through physical space. There's no other way to for human beings to generate energy other than there being some sort of like transmission from one mechanical motion into some other more fine transmission, which itself requires like a lot of energy lost in the process. Like solar panels and mechanical processes are only something like 30 to 40% efficient at best, let alone internal combustion vehicles, etc., mechanical energy. All of these factors get factored into the AI consumption cycle. And so therefore, the heat that's coming off these GPUs in these data centers is equivalent to massive amounts of energy being wasted in terms of like energy production plants, coal burning, fossil fuels, nuclear power, et cetera, things that could be going to, other things will be, funneled into, computation. So we developed this language called eshkol, which is sort of advantageous in the sense that it has the performance of a low-level language like C, with a dialect which is somewhat familiar to computer scientists or researchers who have seen languages like Lisp or Scheme or something like that. It's not exactly the simplest thing to learn. Scheme was taught at MIT. It is a functional programming language, so it is a little bit more advanced than a regular imperative programming paradigm you might see in something like C, or the kinds of multi-paradigm programming you might see in Python or something like that. But it is nevertheless sort of a let's say a mid to upper mid tier high level dialect in terms of its ability to be understood, and it is very formally adaptable to mathematics. Lisp itself is a mathematical programming language. It actually predates the existence of computers. It was written on paper for basically a decade before it was ever put on a computer. So it was grounded in this algebraic set theoretical sort of approach to computation, and it's based on what we call lambda calculus, which is sort of like a universal model of a Turing machine. So in lambda calculus, you can effectively model any kind of operation that a universal computer can do, and you can do so algebraically. Nevertheless, eshkol is intended to be a high-performance AI and machine learning, scientific computing language for people to build their own agentic systems, basically from scratch, using these primitives so that they can deploy them on minimal scale consumer electronic devices such as cell phones or consumer computers or obsolete technology. One of the main architectural kind of considerations that went into eshkol was, can we run an LLM on a Windows 95 PC? Can we deploy current era artificial intelligence technologies on machines that are 30 years old? We're talking 486i and Pentium style processors. Would it have been possible to have had the AI revolution that we're having today in the 1990s? And that was really the concept that drove the development of the eshkol language. And the answer to that question is yes. Eshkol can be used to build and deploy agents that can provide LLM capabilities and relatively advanced models on consumer hardware from 30 years ago, including minimal scale devices in our day and age today. Effectively, it will bring about the ability to run a high performance intelligence on a sub $100 consumer device. And that's part of the motivation for its development as well, giving a framework for building long-running agents which are capable of introspective, self-referential, self-modifying programming. So that is a basic rundown of the eshkol language from a very external perspective. One thing I didn't mention that's quite important as well is that it's the world's first fully differentiable compiled language. So it's the first language in history to feature compiler level auto differentiation. So every single expression in eshkol can be differentiated, provided it's defined in a numerical framework that could permit something like that. Although you can effectively inherit operations, through various kinds of, macro style, connecting one thing to another. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what kind of machines and emergent kind of conscious processes will come about when people start sort of connecting different parts of eshkol to itself and different kinds of data and things like that. I wanted to make a language for the neo-millennium that would fully embrace all of our past, but also carry us forward into the future. So it's really a very forward-thinking and backwards-thinking language. It's truly the language of the new aeon.
Thank you so much, TSOTCHKE. That was incredible. Obviously, it is the language for the new aeon. So, what is the language that is both primordial and forward-thinking? That would be truly aeonic. Is something like this, because it has to kind of return to first principles where it's like mathematical, where we even the word, I was going to actually ask you to explain it rather than me explain it, who's like a secondhand hearer of what the name means. But I just want to point out that it is very interesting that Nema in the Aeon of Mott workings in the 90s, she did have her keyword. I'm not saying I agree with it, but her keyword is similar. I'm not saying it's the same, but it is similar to one of the many meanings that eshkol also means in Hebrew. So I just wanted to point that out. But TSOTCHKE, please explain what eshkol means in your however many layers you want to describe it. And also, I think one of the other things, this is sort of tangential, is that what is really exciting about all of your work, just broadly, is the fact that it does look to the 90s, not just to the 90s aesthetically, but as you said, through the lens of consumer hardware, and to reconstruct actually usable sort of like, it's not really dystopian and it's not really cyberpunk. It's something totally different. And it's sort of like it's like taking the remains of things that exist, that really existed, like real history that people don't really understand now, and remixing them, sort of re-putting them back together and repurposing them. So there's a very much a DIY punk ethos that I appreciate. I don't know if you identify with that anymore. I'm not saying that TSOTCHKE does. So this is totally me, Jin. But anyways, TSOTCHKE, just can you untangle that? I'm sorry. And explain what eshkol means. And then also just like the sort of vision that you had, this sort of like post-utopianism where you're sort of sifting through the exiles, the cast-offs of globalist civilization and collecting and taking them back in, putting them back into exaltation, like these lost artifacts.
So, in the history of artificial intelligence, which many people think is a new phenomena, I think many people believe that AI is something that has just come about in the last, say, couple of years, or maybe since the emergence of ChatGPT or something like that. And this is a common misconception. Artificial intelligence is an ancient concept. Terence McKenna once said that the great city of which in profane archaeology we think of as being the first so-called city of all time. This is obviously not true, but let's say, canonically, is the first city of all time. Terence McKenna referred to it as, say, the first virtual reality. So these cybernetic concepts of systemic control, action at a distance, affectation through the will alone, these are not new ideas, and ultimately they share their origin with the emergence of artifice and human interaction with matter from the beginning. So from the this is sort of echoed in the themes of Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, sort of from the moment that the contract was made between man and the machine, it put us on a unavoidable course, which will eventually lead to either an emergence. So there are multiple, obviously, ways of looking at it. There's the 2001 A Space Odyssey view, which is effectively man overcomes technology, effectively defeats it. There's sort of a that's maybe a Apollonian sort of a view or something, Dionysian sort of view of technology or something like that, that it's this yoke to be cast down or something like this. And then there's the sort of the transhumanistic view, which is that technology is meant to be this like sort of like a crutch or like a thing that will like overwhelm human existence or something like that. And they will become like, one, singular entity or something like that. I think that I sort of subscribe to a view in which like, it's almost like an irrelevance of technology. It's sort of like a McLuhanist idea of this notion of a return to an oral sort of a culture in a post-literary sense, in which like things return from being sort of externalized categorical concepts to being more like vibrational or oral in the McLuhanist sense, sort of fixtures. So sorry, I've gotten a little off track here, but the point being, the origin of artificial intelligence goes back far beyond the era that we're currently in right now. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to start in, the early 1980s. This was considered the great winter of artificial intelligence. So at this point, artificial intelligence research had become stagnant. There was a lot of energy throughout the 1950s all the way into the late 1970s, which saw, computing technologies as being this, gateway towards, an autonomous thinking process or something like this, which was really like the goal of mankind really from the beginning, was to create an entity that would that would somehow, be a thing unto itself, and it's sort of in a sense be an undoing of the promise that God said, it is not good that man be alone. Let me make a helpmeet for him. And he put man to sleep, and he took from his side, and he made the woman. And this was the the solution to the loneliness of man. But from the first moment that man left Gan Eden, he began to reach into the earth and try to find form, and this evolved into different forms of cultural expression and totems and things that we live in today. Again, I got a little off track.
I don't think you did. I just will say, TSOTCHKE, that the whole point of having us in conversation, well, it's me like sort of sifting through the brilliance that is you, but I think also it is the references you make, sort of like drawing from many textual traditions. Maybe you're anchored in your faith, but I think it's more of a question of like you're anchored. This. You have a lot of influences. You have a lot of things you draw from. Yeah, the well is deep. So I appreciate that, and I think people listening will also appreciate that, because a lot of, as you and I discussed, a lot of the people listening to it are not they're not necessarily like magi of the mountain, but they know more than most people, I would say, or they're like more aware of things. Maybe they're not practical magicians or anything, but we're speculatively looking at sort of the reality. So I think that hearing you, who is a brilliant scientist, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but hearing you drop McLuhan and like chaos magic and a speculative math and like a space-time stuff, and like you did last time, and just like all the different works, it makes sense together. Knowledge makes sense together. And I think that this is sort of also what eshkol is about. Anyways, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just want to say, TSOTCHKE, the synthesis is the magic. So please go on. Don't feel
Well, so the point is, AI research was actively in development as early as the late 1940s. So, like the development of the universal Turing machine, and guys like Alonzo Church, who built the universal, calculus system that we referred to earlier, lambda calculus, which led to the development of Lisp, which stands for the List Processing Language. So Lisp is kind of a pseudo acronym, so to speak. But so Lisp was designed and written on paper really as early as the 1950s. And it was not really formalized in type until, quite later. And it led to the development of a bunch of, different languages, of which the one that has the most influence on our enterprise was called Scheme. Scheme was developed in the 1970s by some individuals sort of in the auspices of MIT. Guy Steele is one of the main voices in that, and he actually also wrote Common Lisp and some other very very well-known dialects. Lisp itself Scheme itself rather is commonly related to the structure and interpretation of computer programs. So that very famous book that was taught through classes at MIT by the very very famous professors who wrote it and who taught it for many years. So Scheme was sort of like a lightweight language that could express really powerfully a lot of these ideas that relate directly to theoretical computer science, which is very, very closely related to algebra and linguistics and set theory and things like this. But Scheme was not ever a high performance language. So languages like Common Lisp tried to mitigate some of these things, but they were never able to achieve the performance characteristics of languages like C. So C very famously was developed at Bell Labs in the 1970s. And it was the language that was used to write basically the third version of Unix, and then it basically became the language that to this day powers the entire world. Everything in terms of like an interpretable computer programming language usually comes through a C processing layer before it reaches the metal on most machines. C really is the sort of the gold standard, so to speak, of a programming language. Lisp never really got there. So during the 1980s, 1970s, a lot of research was being done in artificial intelligence in Lisp, because Lisp is really good at what's called symbolic programming, which basically means, linguistic objects correlating to some kind of data structure or something like this. So very human readable, very good candidate for what you might think of as like a machine consciousness process. Unfortunately, the performance was just simply not there. So in the 1980s, they went into a period that was referred to as the Great Winter of AI, in which research sort of came to a bit of a standstill because there was a barrier between what the technology at the time was capable of and where the theoretical interest sort of was. This sort of changed in the early 90s when people like Yann LeCun sort of started developing the neural processing sort of model that we're living in today. I'm not going to just start name dropping people because this is an occult podcast and not a computer science podcast, but the godfathers, so to speak, of deep learning sort of laid the foundations in the 1980s. And Yann LeCun, as I mentioned, in the early 90s with his minced optical character recognition algorithm, really the first time that a machine ever could look at a picture and see what it was that it was looking at. And this sort of led to the development of convolutional neural networks, and that led to where we're at today. It's a much longer conversation about sort of the history of the last 20 years of both say cryptocurrency and AI. They're both tied to the development of NVIDIA graphics cards and sort of the development of GPU based programming and things like this. So they're both very intimately connected to each other. NVIDIA, as you know, was a game hardware provider in the 1990s into the early 2000s. It was really quite an accident that researchers discovered that neural networks and hashing, which is what you use to solve blockchain problems, were adequately solved on GPUs, and that actually led to sort of the economic conditions that we're living in today. I wonder if AI is going to move to ASICs in the same way that cryptocurrency moved to ASICs. The difficulty of processing these complex mathematical schemas sort of requires moving away from a generic computing framework, i.e., GPUs are really good at computing polygons, which are basically just shapes, geometry, into something that's more like specific to a certain process. Google, for example, has the TPU, which is like a tensor processing unit, which is just an ASIC. So you can see that industrially, there's already a motion towards this kind of technology. To get back to the idea of what eshkol itself is. So eshkol, from the point of view of the technology, is a unification of the past with the present, as you and I were just saying, and it gives the symbolic, sort of comprehensible, tractable, interpretable aspect of artificial intelligence, a union with the incomprehensible, infinitely scaling tensor architecture of the neural processing side of artificial intelligence, to make a union of what we call neurosymbolic programming, which allows for machines to be able to both read their own code and modify it. So it is my opinion that eshkol will be the first, but not the only, language that permits self-modifying machine processes, and will birth the first self composing self-driving intelligent process.
So I think, I mean, there's nothing really to add. I just feel like you're talking about a language, and I think people have very fixed ideas about what language is, and I think you laid out a really strong historiography on, at least for like a person who's totally unfamiliar, sort of like history of computing languages. I was going to make a joke about the graphics card, like the most shaped rotatory graphics card wins, I guess. But as I always say, like you should be a shape rotator in your mind because that's also winning in a way. But yeah, in a graphic card, definitely. But it is interesting, right? Like the thing you brought about games, like because games require like input through consciousness to like solve them, but it also requires the computer to generate them. And it is kind of like a meta reality. And I've talked about this when I've done video game episodes, how we kind of exist in the hyperspace through games, not necessarily like full immersive. I'm not talking about VR or anything, but part of your consciousness, part of your spark is definitely, within the within the framework of the game. So I think that it makes perfect sense to me, at least, why gaming GPUs can solve problems and can enable us to sort of not re-gamify. I think people use that metaphor too much, like game theory. Like, yes, of course, game theory is real. Robert Anton Wilson, I know you, someone that you like as well. I do too. And but he kind of talks about this, and like obviously Tracy Twyman talks about this, like ARGs and understanding like this broader system of meta reality, and then all the connections to these other things. And I'm not talking even at a parapolitical layer. Obviously, I come at it from a metaphysical layer. So I just call it sparks of splendor, and like I just want to see those things. And like I'm gonna sound very J, but I'm obviously a Buddhist, but like I'm cool with it. Like if Hashem wants to like reveal some the secrets of Samech to me, I'll take it.
I just want to mention, because we did just briefly mention Tracy Twyman. In Clock Shavings, she talks a lot about this origin of the game of chess, which she referred to as a concept called a geo. And this is something that dominates my thinking quite a bit, that chess, the first, game, is in a sense a reenactment of the fall of man from grace, or from Gan Eden, so to speak. But it's also a reenacting of sort of the war in heaven, if you want to think about it like that, or in a more kind of Hasidic sort of sense, the idea of the Zimzum, and how like through different sort of glaciations or contortions in reality, the light of the Kav is sort of distorted in such a way that it takes on personages that appear to be opposed or averse to each other in some sense, or something like that. But the idea that because I often think about, like, if you were to make chess 2, what would it be? I've often tried to generate a concept for a game, a new game, which would be, in a sense, not the anti-chess, but what would a game be in a world in which chess did not exist? Like, what is there a way of predicating a interactive game theoretical mode that doesn't involve the assumption of rules, in which like there are strategic differentials, or alternative positional sort of differentiations, or something like this? Is there a way of contorting or inverting the concept of a game away from the oppositional sort of hierarchical domination mode, while still leveraging the aspects of it. Like if you think about the thrill of the hunt and the thrill of the chase, but also the thrill of being caught, in the wild, there's sort of a game that's being played, and it's quite literally referred to as game when hunting, between the predator and the prey, where there's an exchange of agreement, and there will be a pursuer and a pursuit, and one will win and one will lose, and you can even see in the footage of animals that have been caught by predators, that there's like not even a resignation, but there's like a look of acceptance on their face, like, yeah, you got me, tag. So again, in the fallen world, the chess world, the Ageo world, in the Ageo world, we are oriented against each other. You go, I go, you take, I take, last man standing wins. I often think about the concept of gaming, in which the thrill of the hunt is still there, but without the idea of sort of one must conquer all, or black must swallow white, or something like that. What is a game in the absence of death?
Very profound point. And I think you hit it. I think that's exactly right. Like, what does a game look like in the absence of duality, like strict sort of black and white binaries, like very Manichaean? And I think this is exactly like what Buddhism would say. And I think also, like your example of the chess, I think that plays out perfectly in the Puranas. The firstborn son of Shiva is the god of chess. His name's Murugan, or Skanda. Skanda is a word that also appears in the New Testament Bible 44 times. Very interesting. It's a compound Greek Sanskrit word, scandalon. And I know a lot of the Kabbalah bros, like they're very Hebrew, like the people that do like yeshiva and all that stuff, like that I don't do. They know what that word is because of Torah study. So I kind of impressed some of them the other day when I said, well, they were like, yeah, it's a fetter. And I'm like, well, it can be translated in different ways. But anyways, the point is that that's also the sort of god of chess. That's also his name, is Skanda. So that is his purview. And so a lot of what the Puranas is very subtly about whether he rebels from God the Father, Hashem, you could say, Shiva, if you want, or does he side with his mother, Tara, or does he actually acquiesce to the demiurge, to Brahma? So this is a story that is like, you could say it's like a deep theology within like sort of the tantric subtext of the more orthodox, I guess you could say, Puranas. So I think chess is sort of like the primordial, well, it's not the primordial technology, but there's, as you said, Sachki, there is something that contains the primordial potential. So yes. And then Buddhism takes it to be that the whole sort of reality play is the game itself. So we are playing chess, but do we take strong binary roles? And I don't mean anything about identity. I'm talking strictly like perceptual choices. Do we take this path or do we take this path? Do we choose this thing? Do we choose this thing? And are we agential, or are we sort of more within a construct? And I think this is also like, to reference Tracy, is like, she's obviously writing about Gnosticism. She's obviously very engaged with a kind of sort of broad Gnostic framework of these like left-hand path sort of groups and organizations. And I'm not even saying that I disagree with that 100%. I think a lot of what they're drawing from is older wisdom science. I think that's provable. I'm not saying anything crazy or new, but they're kind of like the modern neo-Gnostics, and they're drawing from things that actually already existed, ideas that already existed. And this is what people tend to do. And then they tend to sort of like embody those historical concepts in this neo way. So that was probably the older I guess you made a joke about boomers and Gen X right before we started recording, which was very funny, but I won't repeat it or about who it was. But I think that, no, it wasn't about anyone. I don't want Sachi to get in trouble, but, I think that's what it is. It's like the older generation had their ways of engaging with these sort of reality games. And as we move forward, especially, I don't know what your perception of the like younger generation, Sashki, but like they seem to be much more equipped cognitively, intellectually, at least to function in this world of meta reality.
Yeah, there's a lot there to address. I identify very strongly with the younger generation more so than my own cohort. I was a very early internet user at a time when very, very few millennials were online. So whereas most millennials really didn't, adapt to internet life until mid 2000s, aside from email or something like that, your average, individual prior to the advent of smartphones was really not using the internet for anything other than maybe sending emails or checking certain websites or something like this. They certainly weren't enacting their lives online, whereas individuals like myself were basically fully online, going all the way back to the mid 1990s. So as a result, I'm very much like an internet native versus a lot of other members of our generation. So part of my maybe self-imposed hermitdom throughout my my 20s and 30s was maybe a reaction to the dominance of millennial culture and sort of the asynchronism that I felt with regards to their values and sort of the consumer oriented post Uber culture sort of conformistic framework that they are sort of embedded in. I've definitely felt much more comfortable expressing myself in society in the last 6 years as members of Gen Z have become adults and started making their interests known online. So I feel much more comfortable amongst the current generation than I ever have. Like I wanted to say, like, it's so befitting for Threshold Saints that we've chosen to record episode 36 on the threshold of the next season. Because it's the time of what more appropriate time, at least in terms of the goyish, profane world. What more
social, Sashki?
What was that? Oh,
I'm
really?
kidding. No.
No,
Everybody
going to the
knows.
episode,
Everybody knows. I'm so. What did they call it? Philo-Semitic or whatever.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. And then
I'm
there's
just
all
fucking
the
with you, dude.
jokes about Judeo-Hoppas. So like,
Yeah, but for real though, dude, for real.
I mean,
we
everything
live
that
in
has
Disneyland.
happened. It
Yeah.
is literally the 2013 Disney ARG for COVID. Like that is, we are playing it out. I have no doubt in my mind.
No, it's 100% happening. They literally turned COVID into a freemium cell phone game, and we're just playing it. Yeah.
And so what do we do? I'm gonna go like really aeonic, Sasha. Sorry. Okay, so we have to break free. We have to break free of the tunnels of Set, and we have to, Princess of Breaking Klippas. So we got to, we have to liberate the light. We have to break out the light. So that's basically kind of my mission, I would say. Like maybe my hidden chaotic agenda of the whole show is like the whole thing of like we were talking pre-recording, like your initial thing online, or a lot of it, besides from the math and comp sci, was like the princess of the Crystal Millennium Kingdom or the Crystal Millennium. And like my thing is like the aeon of the daughter. And as I said, like you are the godfather of the architecture that I used. Like I used my own stuff, Tantra and all that, and obviously Kabbalah and everything as good as I was at that time. Obviously I've changed now and I've improved. But I think that there's a clear aeonic framework that's in play. In reality, I can recognize other people who see it. You can start to see the colors. I know people will say, "Oh, Jin's saying he has synesthesia again," because I got a lot of shit for it.
I quite literally have synesthesia. Like,
I'm telling people.
Is that a weird thing, like that you're not allowed to have?
So I don't think it's weird because since
Jin,
2020,
can you believe
I've had
that?
it.
Jin, can you just talking about myself? But can you believe that like polymath, scientist, Jewish Kabbalist, artist, programmer, guitarist, composer, artist guy has synesthesia? I don't buy it for 1 second.
Stop, but I'm saying like it. If you get it, you fundamentally understand, because everything that you said, you're gonna see the sparks of splendor in your own correspondences, whether it's with numbers or with sound or with colors or with anything. So then you're gonna start to like see the patterns. Like this is so normal for Kabbalah. Like this is not anything crazy. And then,
well, I was synesthetic from birth. I have super extreme like autism and like you know, like this is what people don't really get about me. Like, we live in such a chauvinistic society that sees intelligence as the only real distinguishing factor. Like, oh, if you were smart, you would do this. We live in a bully punishment world, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I actually am quite fond of. We're kind of getting the material, which is like borderline. We got to actually get back into the show, by the way. But
we're gonna move back.
We'll move back.
Move us back.
Well, not yet. But let's just hash this out quick before we go back, okay? But you know, we live in this like bully world, okay, which I'm not against. You know, to quote, you know, $1 Million Extreme, bully early, bully often. You know, 100% endorsement. You know, but the point is, we literally do live in this like retard punishment reality, which should be. We've been spending most our lives living in an artist paradise, you know, like, and that's literally the world we live in. I don't know if people understand this. The fact that we have colored lights that indicate when you drive and when you shouldn't drive means we live in a society dominated by autism. So we need to stop punishing people. It's like I don't know if you realize this, but you're engaging with like individuals who are like normgroid.
So I don't disagree with you, TSOTCHKE, that there's a lot of normgroids out there and they are not prepared. They are very unprepared.
No, but they're flesh creatures who exist solely to propagate like information. Like, it's not an accident that Richard Dawkins, who come on down, you know, but it's a family feud. Richard Dawkins originated the concept of memetics, and he's a geneticist, right? So I think Gurdjieff would agree that most people are just platforms carrying like substance that's used as you know, genetic material to spawn actual human beings. Like, sorry. Like
no, you're right, TSOTCHKE, and
that's Hasidism. That's literally what Hasidism thinks.
I know, and I'm not. You know, I'm not anti. But where I differentiate maybe is that I say, okay, I agree with that reality. I agree with that view. But like, I don't think it's my responsibility to save them. I don't think it's my responsibility to punish them, and I don't think it's
no. I honestly think the one and only thing any of us had to do in this life was find each other. That was literally
yes.
That was the only function. It doesn't even matter what else happened. All we had to do was just be like ping, and then you send out a wave and it hits somebody else, bounce back. That was it. That was all we had to do. We mapped it.
Well, so we're gonna go back in the show now, but I'm gonna tell a little anecdote. I've told it before, Sachi, so I'm sorry if you're embarrassed by it, but it's very flattering for you.
It's fine. I love being included in the conversation.
Of course, I carry you through the aether wave. I write your name on the tunnels, as they say, in fluorescent marker, obviously, permanent. So that's what I do. I lord drop you.
Pink.
Right, bright pink. Just like I don't even like pink. That's such a funny thing, but that is like
I don't even know
an
if I, dude. I'm wearing a pink shirt right now.
Well, I said this, and I didn't actually say it in. I have.
Can I complain about something really quick?
Yes,
I want to hear your story, but so my son is very young, right? And one of my favorite songs from childhood that I think about all the time is "Sing a Rainbow," and it goes red and yellow and pink and green, purple and orange and blue. I can sing a rainbow. Sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow too. I love that song so much. It literally makes me cry when I hear it. But pink is not in the rainbow. You could have easily said red and yellow and violet and green, purple and orange and blue. But they included pink for purely aeonic purposes.
Correct.
This is the reason why in all these shows, it's always red, green, blue, yellow, pink. Always.
So this has to do with pink. So I'll even say an anecdote about about the song. Pink is the contour of reality. So it's like the way we understand that there's truth, because it arises from our mind. It's really the color of the crystal millennium. You've said this, Sachi. This is nothing new for you. But for people who haven't heard me say it, you can hear me say it. So it's like even pre-recording, you're talking about like the light, the splendor coming through the crystal. Well, of course, that's pink. So how do you know it exists? Well, it exists because we exist. So us perceiving it as TSOTCHKE, which obviously is a joke and a bit, but also not, because this is the anecdote. You asked me about this on our first recording. You said, "Jin, what's the name of your show? Can you explain it to me?" And I did want to tell you. It's not that I didn't, but I didn't really fully understand. I did not have the understanding. Okay, but you did say like, okay, there's this Hebrew concept. It's like the Saudi. It's like, and we talked a little bit about it, and like Path 17, and I said, oh, okay, and I started to fill in the blanks. I started to imagine it. The fool walking off the abyss from Hokmah to Kether, and then falling down into the path from Netzach to Yesod as the saint. And so it's weird because you said that exact thing. Like the whole point of the show, I'm going to try not to get emotional, but that is the whole point, was to like find other people who in and of themselves also had the sparks, but then also show people that like Rebbe Nachman said, like you have to tell people that it's possible. You have to give people the framework, the aeonic framework, and say that yes, we might be trapped in the lower worlds, we might be trapped in the klipas, we might be trapped in the tunnels, but there is possibility, there is potential. Like whether you want to say it theistically or non-theistically, like TSOTCHKE, I'm quite non-theistic, but I'm not anti-theistic. So whether you want to say that God gave us the tools, or it's just in our minds, or it's like in the world for us to like build like you're doing, that's what the show was supposed to be. It was supposed to be for me, like you were talking about being not really being chronological or asynchronous, or I forget the exact word you used, but out of time. That's exactly how I felt my whole life. And so there is a kind of hidden time, you could even say, I know you know this, of when you cross if you want to say there's a secret threshold at Yesod to Dath, which there is, obviously. And it's interesting because it is sort of represented by the word samech, which is also represented by a circle. And so you could say that, because it's the hidden unity. So, but it's also represented by an arrow. You're talking about Apollo a little bit in a more cryptic way. But I'm a Sagittarius, so I often think of myself as a wielder of the arrow. So I often joke about that. So when I sort of came into the fullness of the understanding, I was like, well, actually, it's kind of profound. And then if you look at tarot, it's the Temperance card. And I've never been like, they'll say like I'm very much like comfortable with like my gender of birth and like all that stuff, like my race, everything. So that's not what I needed to transform, but what I needed to transform was what was inside. It was like the you know the inner person, the real person maybe. So that's also the project, but I think both of those things are the same thing. It's like attract the saints, find them, tell them like, yeah, you are actually. If you're recognizing if you're recognizing me, if I'm recognizing you, because it has to happen in perception, has to happen in Hesed. So that's the whole point. And then through that interaction, you can transform because then you see yourself reflected in the other people. So you can see what parts of yourself you like, what you don't like, and how to refine it to be more in keeping with loving kindness.
To follow what you were saying, there's a reason why on the Etz Chaim, there's a straight path that goes from Keser to Das to Tiferet to Yesod to Malchus. The moon is Malchus. The moon is grounded in Malchus. The moon is really the true light of the Lord that shines in this world. And that's why we're only permitted to see it minimally. The sun was worshipped for many, many years, eons really, by the pagans, by many peoples of the world. Why? Because the sun dominates the sky. It's not true that, most of the time it's half day and half light. Most of the time it's light. We live in a very permissive world. We live in a very blessed world. God gives us light all times of the day. There's a dominating light that lives in the sky that has many qualities. And those are godly qualities, things of beauty, things of righteousness. It is said that all daylight was made for the righteous and all joy thereof, which is to say that each day of life exists solely for the righteous and for righteousness. Of course, we know that the day is composed of both the day and the night. And even the day is composed of subparts, and the night is composed of subparts. The moon represents God's true light in the world. The diminishment of the moon is a result of the sin and the ignorance of mankind that God had to conceal himself. We only get to see that divine light one time in a month. So 28 days out of the year. Once out of 28 days, 12 times a year, we see a glimpse of true righteousness. The rest of the year, we see comings and goings. So much so that we even have a few days a year, specifically one, but it appears to be a few days a year, where all of the love and light and righteousness in the world is taken away. What we call the new moon, so to speak, the Rosh Chodesh, which the Chodesh, by the way, is another name for the moon. The moon itself is a very interesting thing. It's known by several names. The most generous and loving way to refer to the moon is Lavana. which means white, really. And that white means like the white of light, the white of unbroken light. Of course, we know that the moon itself does not have light or possess light. That's well known, both scientifically and from the sages, that the moon only reflects light and gives no warmth, but it does give light. Another name for the moon, more accurately perhaps, is Yerach. And Yerach is where we get the idea of the concept of a month. The final name that we might think of the moon is Sahara, which means a portion. Specifically, it means a crescent, which means the concealed coming from and going into darkness. That's the true name of the moon if we're to understand ourselves. And this is why the moon has been venerated throughout history. This is the hidden but misunderstood vision of the moon, which was worshipped through occult societies. You see, the sun can be seen in 3 levels, like the moon. First, you have Shemesh, which is, Shemesh, which is to say, a fire is here. Here is a flame. So this is the part of the sun that feels the heat on our bodies every day. And that is the part that reflects God in this world. So God's love is what we call Shemesh. That's why on Hanukkah, for example, we light the middle candle. It's called Shemesh because that's God showing himself, Nes Gadol Hayape, or Nes Gadol Hayashem, as we would say in the diaspora. There was a miracle there. That's the there. The there is Shem. So Shamash, there's a fire. Okay? And that is the part of God expressing himself in the world in the form of love. And the love comes across as warmth. So that's why we associate love with warmth. When you hug someone, you feel the warmth. That's Shamash. The part of the sun, which was worshipped by the heathens, is called Chama, which means heat, hot, but specifically means the scalding or scorching power of the sun. So it's the actual force, the dynamism of the sun. And this is what was worshipped throughout the ages, through various societies, as God, the force of the sun. Not the love, not the warmth, but the force. The final level of the sun is called Cheres, which is the aspect by which something bakes. So to become dry. So the sun can be called Cheres, the thing that dries. So by contrast to the moon,
The thing that dries the clay vessel.
that's correct.
And then obviously the moon is a cool, but it's not it's more neutral, but it's cool neutral. That's also what pink is, a cool neutral color. So that is very interesting, obviously.
Well, in the world of sonics and acoustics, going back to our very first episode, the Kabbalah of light and sound, pink noise is that quality of noise in which it's not just this upper register kind of treble kind of a sound. Pink noise is more like a kind of a thing.
Correct.
And the pink noise is literally the sound of life. It's the sound of breathing. It's flesh. There's a reason why they say we're all pink on the inside. Why do you think that is?
I mean, you can't see my hand, Sachi, but I'm doing like the shrug gif because this is it. This is it's the Ionic thinking. Even the idea of like the heat from the sun. Like you can look at the Buddhist iconography where I'm building on the sort of pre-existing Aeonic concepts, and like it's obviously like a daughter. She's obviously emergent from the heatless flame. That's even what it's called.
Well,
She dances with
what is
both
the
feet.
heatless flame? It's the moon.
That's right, because she's tempered both Gevurah and Hesed, or Geburah and Gedula, if you prefer. But both the fire and the water, it's tempered within her because she's dancing. So
we mentioned that the moon is seated in Malchus, but the seat of righteousness is Yesod. Is it a coincidence that Yesod sits in the most stable possible position? There's no tilting. There's no corruption. There's no misorientation. Yesod, righteousness will always be rooted in the moon. And it's that from that seat of righteousness that what we call the human being can blossom. That creature of multi-level interaction with itself and with reality. I'm making this shape with my hand while I speak to you, where like I point my 4 fingers at myself and I turn my middle finger inward, pointing towards my palm. And when you think about that, this is the Sephiroth that we're talking about right now.
of course, because Malkuth is inside of you. And where do we reside? I mean, everything you say, Sachki, is like, this is just like you, everyone listening should like really take note. Like I even take note. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying that's the foundation of the world, what Sachki's explaining. Like that is, and the foundations are stable. And it's you have to go out and perceive the world and like be agential in it. Like, you know, when Sachki's talking about programming languages being agentic, that's also an Aeonic word. So I just want to say that like it's really important. This is like fundamental nature of reality wisdom science, but it's not even wisdom science. It's if you actually take it to be even just conceptually or speculatively true, which is fine. We can do speculative Kabbalah, that's fine. But if you take it like that, you will actually, I believe that people will actually start to see the sparks. In my personal opinion. I know, I made a lot of rabbis mad just now. I'm sorry. My apologies. Bad.
It is
But
written V'metzedeki harevayim kachoch chavim v'cho, which means those who administer righteousness to the masses or to the to the group will shine forever like the stars. There's nothing greater than to impart righteousness and wisdom unto those around you who are yearning for some portion of light. What does it mean to Mezedek the rabble? That's really what Rabbanim means. It means the rabble. Or Harabim. You'll have to correct that. That's really what Harabim means. It really means the rabble. That's really where we get that word in English. What it means to Mezedek is to judge the world favorably. It is the function of the Zedek to see everyone as who they truly are, which is a creature of pure love, pure wisdom, and pure understanding, together as one singular entity. The function of the Zedek is to pass through the world and show the ones who are fallen who they are. It's not about who is this and who is that and who did this and who did what. It's about who you are and what you have inside. And if someone or something outside of you can help you bring that thing which is inside of you to the outside of you, then they will be remembered and cherished and beloved for generations. It never dims a candle to impart its light to another. Okay, well, there you go.
Well, as we talked about in our second episode, Sashki, I gave an example of a prophet, Job. He went through many hardships, right? I mean, you know the story better than me. I only
Dude,
grew up
I
Catholic.
literally have it sitting on my desk right now, like not even an exaggeration.
I mean, he is the prophet of 777, you could say.
Sure.
Right? Because God took away all everything that he had 7 times over, and he rewarded him 7 times over, and that's the whole sort of point of the story. And it's like, yeah, his hardships were great, and he probably had doubts, but he pushed through.
It's not so much that I have doubts. It's that like I'm literally coming to the conclusion I'm doing the best that I can, and I've had the same attitude my entire life, which is I've never mistrusted myself and I've never mistrusted my abilities, but I can do anything. I have no doubt about that. But like, do I deserve even like an ounce of like happiness or anything good happening to me?
Yes. I say yes, Sachki. You can't. This is the thing. I see a lot of Hasids. They're very complicated in this way, like in this exact same way. Because it's a very dialectical relationship, and you have to be around a lot of Hasids to kind of like get it, what they're talking about. It's not the idea of like deserving or undeserving. I know this is like very Torah language. It's exactly what you said. It's like if you get right in your heart, I'm going to use very pop culture sort of framing, Sachki, I apologize. But if you get right in your heart, the path does unfold before you.
It's so fucked up that you said that because I knew you were going to say that. I'm not fallen. Just to be clear.
I agree. We're not fallen. I agree. I'm just using the parapolitical
We are
language
definitely
of my
hijacking their DNA, though. That's 100% happening.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, like, that's the function of it, is to, like, literally, like, force these people to be good. Like,
Sachki,
we're literally going to kill them with kindness.
No, that's the way. That is the way. Like,
I hate that I became a Fabian, but that's just how I've been
thinking about this. That's so funny. That's so funny. I was thinking about this because we have undergone a rightward swing. You and I talked about this both on and off air. But then we kind of reconcile it, and you're like, yeah, you actually can't live as a Wignot like properly.
No, you actually literally just have to be full-blown liberal, actually.
Actually, to survive in the world.
You just have to be like, it's just what we call like evil liberalism, or like, you have to be like what we call in the office, we call it dark woke.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you just have to be like an evil liberal, basically. It's like that's how to survive in this world. Yeah.
But I also think that there's like an aeonic story there. I think that like the edifice of like the bullshit liberalism, I think is breaking. And I think that that's interesting because then it's like, what can we actually do with it? People are like, why do you do this? Like, why do you want to interview like people who are into Kabbalah and magic and all this stuff? And I'm like, because it's like Plato 101, like the magic arises in our discourse. It's not in their fucking text.
There's a certain like anti-Semitic bent there though. Like, let's be honest. Like, okay, so like a lot of people have this comprehension that Kabbalah is just this like crash test dummy infinite wasteland where you could just like stack them and pack them, crash them and smash them.
Oh, I don't. I
like,
don't agree with that hermetic kind of like over attribution. I'm not for that.
Well, I don't want to slag Hermeticism or anything.
No, and
like,
I'm not either. But there is a kind of like outer Telema. We'll call it outer temple Telema.
Sure.
Not even Telema. Maybe that's even unfair. We'll just call it outer temple Hermeticism.
But I feel like here's my issue. I feel like almost any of those concerns could be leveled against literally any formalized philosophical system, and that areas like Western occultism just get it the worst because they're like completely unpatrolled, just like totally like anybody can just do it. Like if you're living in an area that has a church and you go there, like they have this whole thing that you have to do and this whole set of whatever. And it's like very formalized, and they're not okay. Well, previously they weren't online and stuff like this. Whereas like nowadays, if you subscribe to an abstract, idealistic philosophical system, you're now in this dialectical battleground where it's like, oh, actually, this is this, and this thing corresponds to this, and whatever. Like, do you realize that the Theosophical Society, which was the inheritors of the sociological vehicle of the Golden Dawn, okay? Like, I'm not saying they were one organization. I'm saying that like the Golden Dawn in a sense was the waiting room for the advent of the Messiah, which was supposed to be this thing that came between the two wars. Okay. Krishnamurti may be one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. Ever, actually. Not for his ideas, not for the things he said, although the things he said and the thoughts he thunk were certainly of extremely high caliber. But for his rejection of the role of physical Messiah to a godless nation of perverts. Do you realize he was adopted as a child to be the leader of the world? Like, this was a child who was taken from a third world hell prison and brought to a first world psycho prison, England, and fashioned to be the world leader. Could you imagine being told your entire life, like, oh yeah, you literally are Mahdi. You are Kalki.
That's scary to me.
No, well, dude, listen, this is for off the books, but let's just say I kind of know what this is like, but in a psychotic, perverse way.
Well, we all do,
like,
right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. That's
But the point is, so Krishnamurti had it all, and all he had to do was thread the screw.
It's so funny because I'm holding a screwdriver right now.
How did I know? How could I have known? But the point is, he was on top of the world, and instead, now likely, if I'm being sociological about it, it was probably due to the fact that he was molested by his handlers. Psychopoetically, he rejected his place in the world. Like literally, it brings up, there's a Philip K. Dick story about this. I think I can't quite remember the name now, but it's so interesting to study the occult outside of the veil of this like pyramidical sex trafficking schema, because it's like we're literally just scholars in Alexandria while the Ptolemaic descendants of Cleopatra fuck each other to death as the city burns.
Basically.
It's just, it's just Philo and Erasthenes and all these guys just hanging out at the Temple of On while the city burns.
Well, you're saying something very aeonic in two ways, Sotchke, is that, first of all, let's deal with the first one, which is the city burning. So let's go a little heterodox. I know you'll be okay with that. And obviously saying that now, obviously Epinoia of Nuria. She burns down the ark twice because it's not in.
I've been thinking about Nuria so much lately.
It's a lot. It's a lot on my mind.
It's so interesting because she doesn't so much burn down the ark as the ark is set aflame as a result of her rejection.
So she's a rebel.
Nuria, well, is she a rebel?
But that's right. That's the superficial paradox of that gospel. Is she a rebel? Because she's Hashem's daughter in sort of a more mythopoetic way, we'll say. So isn't she destroying what is actually made by the archons? So you could also say that about Krishnamurti. Isn't he rejecting the construct of the archons, which are the people that cause the saints harm? You could understand it like that. I think that's a perfectly fine way. I think that's what Gnosticism really is, like a greater Gnosticism, not meant necessarily capital G.
If we're getting really into this, isn't it the function of true Gnostics to just be ground into paste by the helix?
No, it is
but that's job. What happened to the Perfectibilis, and that's what happened to Christ.
Yes, but that's not what's going to happen to us.
So something I've been thinking about. Jin, I'm sorry to tell you, it's unfortunately already happening to me, but we might make it through. I've got through worse, but it's
hard, Sotchke. I've had a really hard longer than that, but like the last 5 years have been pretty tough.
Yeah. I've been thinking about these limes that grow in Southeast Asia, and they call them like Buddha finger limes, right?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and they're used in teas and rituals and all these things. Mm-hmm. But my question is, what did they call them before the Buddha?
Well, that's an interesting idea of like names and sort of going back to eshkol and like what are the primordial names? I know a lot of the early mysticism was.
But like the Buddha is so I've been thinking a lot of recently in the context of Polyphemus and kind of Neoplatonic concepts of being, but the idea that Buddhism in some sense is the formalization of solipsism. It is the idea that while we are detached vessels, like to associate it with Hinduism, I was particularly fond of a way of looking at things called Ashishtadvaitism or Ashita Advaita, which means basically like, qualified non-duality. But this idea that and I don't want to put it into a purely linear like Michel Delanda kind of like point of view or something like this.
We're non-linear on this show, you know that.
But he wrote 1,000 years of non-linear history. So I'm accusing him of linear. So like it's kind of
paradox.
Philip K. Dick believed that there was only one time, and that time is the life and death of Christ. So the 30 to 70 years before that, and the 30 to 70 years after that. And the Roman Empire never really ended. It just sort of transmigrated. And we are now living in the fulfilled neo-Roman time. I don't want to slag, modern internet film critics, but I actually think that Francis Ford Coppola's Metropolis is a really good movie. I think not Metropolis. Sorry, what is it called? Megalopolis. Sorry, I actually think that Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis is a really good movie, and I think people should really check it out. I don't think you have to be a fan of Michael Winterbottom style digital cut-ups or sort of 90s video art stuff or anything like that to really totally appreciate it. But the idea of a neo-Roman transcendence to some sort of biomechanical unification between like a quantum physical reality and materialism, I don't think that that is out of the realm of possibility. And I saw Megalopolis in IMAX last year on the last night that it was showing in Montreal, and honestly, it was one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if it translates well to the regular screen. Maybe people will laugh about the visuals, but it's one of the most optimistic films I've ever seen. And I highly endorse it, and I think everyone should see it.
High praise. Well, this is the thing, as you know, TSOTCHKE, well, very well know. Maybe I shouldn't even say that because you know. But much of pop culture contains a hermeneutic of sort of, if you want to call it Gnostic.
Speaking of Francis Ford Coppola, I'm only injecting this now. Have you seen his early 90s Dracula film, Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yes, of course.
The opening scenes are
because I'm secretly Keanu Reeves. I just want to say that because you know I'm Hoppa, so
I can tell I can tell by the English accent. But that film, from the point of view of special effects and appreciation for just the history of cinema, is incredible. The puppet work. So just the reason why I'm bringing it up is because a significant amount of that film is shadow puppetry work. It's almost unnoticeable because sort of like modern people, we don't really have the minds to really comprehend the craft or like mise en scène or like what goes into filmography. Like not a lot of Sergei Eisenstein appreciators nowadays. Andrei Tarkovsky maybe not so much, but if you saw that, like the reason why I'm injecting it at this moment is just because like literally the first 5 minutes you see in that film are just paper on screen, just light opaquely being blocked by material. This is why I think the medium of film is so subternal and autopoietic on a level that is not, the AI slop era that we're living through right now, I think is really unappreciated by most people. Like I think a lot of people look at like the onslaught of just garbage that is on social media and everywhere as some kind of like net social negative. Whereas if you saw it through the lens of someone like a Stan Winston or like James Cameron or something like that, you'd realize like it was the actual like literal apex of the medium and like what all of cinema was like leaning towards from the moment that like Disney made Tron, or James Cameron put those alien water creatures in the abyss, or T-1000 walking through the gate, or the Tyrannosaurus Rex in Jurassic Park, or Toy Story. By the way, the CEO of Pixar was, of course, Steve Jobs. That's interesting. The Steve Jobs, let me pivot to this. Steve Jobs saw the history of computing as nothing more than the history of graphics. Now, you can see that as nonchalant, as many nerds do, or you can see it as ultimate reality. Steve Jobs understood more than anyone that there's nothing beyond what falls upon the screen, what casts its shadow on the lens, the retina. What John Dee and Edward Teller were gazing into the shoe stone by candlelight and writing Enochian scripts in backwards Latin, achieving levels of intelligence that today would be considered GPT-3 on a surface that could be comprised of nothing more than a well-scrubbed lava stone. There's a blending between reality, media, and the word.